Women Podcast. Power of Women Podcast.
We're here at Olby's today for the next series of the Power of Women podcast. My name is Ruby Rare. I am an author and sex educator and podcaster and very enthusiastic Margate resident. And this series is called Leading Ladies. I'm going to be chatting to some brilliant women doing fantastic things all across Thanet. So I am joined by Natalie and Naomi from Everyday Racism, and I'm very, very happy to be sat down and chatting with you. How are you both doing today?
Yeah, we're good. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Ruby. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. It's lovely to... This has been like such a nice little project because I'm sat down with people who I really like online and out in the world and also as friends. It's like, what a joy. We can just have a chat together. This will be great. And I think we'll be able to find out a bit more about you both, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah.
So obviously, Everyday Racism is an incredible platform and we're going to be talking about that a little bit later on. But to start with, I wanted to ask a bit about your childhoods. So growing up in Thanet, you were like OG Thanet girls and what that was like and what both of you were like as kids. And maybe it might be nice for you to like say what the other one was like as kids.
Oh, that's a good question.
We've never been asked that before.
That's true.
Yeah, so lots of people around Margate where we live ask when we moved here, and we, often have to say, oh, actually, we were born here, born in Margate Hospital.
Yeah. And we get that look of shock. Like, oh my goodness.
It's almost like the opposite of where are you really from? It's like, you're really from here?
Yeah, actually from
true.
here.
Oh, you are from here. Yeah, so we were both born here, grew up here, went to local schools. We both ended up moving away for different reasons. I left to go to university and then ended up in London to finish off my teacher training and then got my first teaching job there. So stayed there for a few years. And Natalie went to Brighton where she worked as an events manager and lived there for a few years. Yeah. And then I came back here about 12 years ago now and settled back here in my hometown and met my husband and had a couple of children. And I feel very settled here now. Yeah. So that's nice.
Yeah. And I came back, I think, like 4 years ago now. And it was interesting because like we kind of had that mentality growing up of, I think most people have this when they grow up in their hometown, but that whole thing of, I guess, we need to leave. Like, we've just got to get out of here. This is terrible. And if you get out, you've sort of made it. So I think I kind of left in my 20s, but then every time I came back, I just noticed like new things, like the Turner, Tracy Emin doing her thing, and then realising, okay, it's different. It's, it's more up and coming. Maybe I could come back here. But I think growing up was an experience for us, for sure.
That's a very polite word to use.
I think it is polite. I try and be polite as much as possible. I think part of it is also not really realising your hometown could be a really nice place, and obviously like the beach was beautiful, living by the sea.
I feel like we didn't appreciate
any of that. And we had like mum had a beach hut growing up, and I was like, I want to go to the beach, I'm bored, and now I think flipping heck, if we had a beach hut now,
why didn't she keep that beach hut?
Yeah, how great would that be? So I think there's elements of that, but also there were really not great elements, and we still have this today, but Margate is and was and is very deprived, and it was a lot more back then. I think as well we experienced a lot of kind of prejudice, mainly racism, because we were the only two black mixed race girls kind of in our area.
Well, there were others.
There were others.
But in our social circle, people that we knew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think if you saw another kind of black person or another mixed race person, you'd be like, oh, wow, hi,
Yeah, it was unusual.
It was very unusual.
When it's something that's like that blatantly noticeable, I think that that is a fairly extreme environment and like really takes its toll.
Exactly. So I think we had to deal with quite a lot of kind of ignorant comments, racism in schools, and just kind of navigating this kind of space of whiteness, because our mum's white, our dad's Black Jamaican, but our friends, our family, our teachers, our place of worship, our postman, everyone was white. And I think that was quite an interesting experience for us. To try and navigate that and really work out those spaces and dealing with covert and overt racism, microaggressions, all of that, which is stuff that we are definitely processing now and learning more about now. But yeah, it was an interesting place, but I wouldn't change it. I
think it's always really fascinating looking back and almost like looking at experiences that we had when we were younger with the lens that we have now. Because I've had, over the years, I've had lots of really interesting chats with my mum and my sister. I'm in a dual heritage family as well. My mum's Sri Lankan, and we just weren't talking about race when we were growing up.
No.
And nowadays we all look at each other and we're like, what the hell are we doing? Like my mum, and I don't say this with like blame, my mum ticked just white British for both me and my sister throughout our whole childhoods. And it was only really in the last 10 years that we've all turned around and gone, oh my gosh, that's really strange. Like for my mum to not even think about that, but just erase like her culture, her heritage from our existence. And that was growing up in Lewisham, where it was a really multicultural space. And like I had my friendship group was like glorious and really varied in so many different ways. But even then, there were just no conversations about this.
I feel like that's how a lot of people operated, though. I mean, we would talk to our mum and dad about it, and they were open, but we certainly didn't talk about it with anybody else. And there wasn't that openness to have the discussions, or if you did, it was very awkward and uncomfortable. So I think partly that was also a bit of a coping mechanism for a lot of people, because actually when you did have those conversations, they weren't about you and they weren't about how you were feeling. It was often about how other people were feeling or how you made them feel. So I think a lot of people just shut down. And thinking about like growing up, and there just wasn't the books, there wasn't that representation, there just wasn't those things that I think it's only been recently, like even in the last couple of years, that really the books have gone into the mainstream. So there was nothing about where our mum could buy us a book about our hair and about being in a multiracial family, and it just didn't exist.
It wasn't there. I remember like the main person in my childhood was seeing Connie off Blue Peter and being like, you look like my mum, and you look a bit like, okay, cool, that's really nice. There was like
one person or two people.
And you're lucky if you got those two. Yeah, totally. So what were you both like as kids? Like how do you remember each other as children? I'm so glad I'm asking this.
This is
good. We're really different.
Yeah, we are.
A lot of people say, like, oh, you sound the same or you look really similar, but our personalities are very different. And that was quite apparent growing up, I think. You were an emo for quite a while. Like,
respect.
Yeah.
Prior to that, what was I?
You liked your gold jewellery.
Yeah.
And your tracksuits.
Yeah.
And your trainers. Whereas I was kind of more like quite focused on school, fairly academic, we're just into different things. And approach things, I think, in different ways.
Yeah.
You were a bit more of a rebel.
I was a rebel. I was naughty. I hated school. Was always in... It's terrible what we used to call it. It was where you used to go when you were naughty. I'm not going to say what we used to call it, but it was terrible. I always had to go there.
You used to get sent out.
I used to get sent out a lot.
I would have been mortified. Like if I had a phone call and you know, they said to mum, she's been sent out or she's got a detention, I would have been absolutely devastated. Yeah. You didn't care.
No.
I think there's an elder sibling thing about that as well, though, because I was fairly rebellious as a teenager, but I was the eldest, and there's a bit of that, like, got to keep it together, got to do the stuff, got to be like, and almost you being able to be kind of so like acceptable in some way to your parents, then it permits your younger siblings to like be a bit more like, I don't know, be a bit more challenging. But I think there's some elder sister stuff going on there.
Yeah. And I was always very conscious about what people thought of me. Yeah. Very super aware and vigilant about how I presented. Whereas Natalie was very much like, and I think this was great, she was like, I'm not bothered.
No, I quite liked people knowing. I'd be like, guess what happened in our family like yesterday? guess what I've just found out.
No, you were like, shh,
like, don't tell anyone. Yeah.
And I think, some of that is just personality. But I think some of that also was formed from feelings of when you're like in the minority. I write about this in the book, that I definitely kind of felt a pressure to be a certain way and to kind of represent my racial identity. It sounds absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. And even as I wrote it, I thought, this is wild. But actually, when I was writing it, I was also processing it. And I turned around to Natalie and I was like, oh my goodness, I've just discovered something about myself that I didn't realise. And that was that I had this pressure. And I remember from a young age that if I was good and likeable and like a good example, then people might not be racist anymore. Which is a mad thing for like a young child to kind of carry around with them.
There's so much pressure in that, but also there's an awful lot of hope on your part of that, of like, you know, that like, oh, okay, well, maybe I can change this environment that I'm in, which is kind of heartbreaking, because you'd almost want, like, obviously you don't need to be anything other than who you are in order to be like loved and accepted, but that is not the case a lot of the time.
No, exactly.
And to feel that pressure of like, well, if I was the best version of myself, then they'd be less racist to me.
Yes.
Yeah. Gosh, that's a big realisation to have partway through writing a book.
Yeah. I had to take a little break.
Yeah. Like, hold up, I need a minute. Okay. So this was obviously a like formative part of your upbringings and your childhoods, and like separately and together. But I'm kind of curious about when you started to have these conversations together in a bit more of a critical way, or maybe a bit more of a public way in terms of friends. And this might be linked to everyday racism coming about, but also it might have been like before that platform existed.
Yeah, I think I don't think we spoke loads about it together growing up. I think I spoke to mum more about it, but I think it was when it was only a few years ago, so I think it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe even before that, after that. But I think I started to really realise this whole thing of like, I really need to talk about this part of my identity and being mixed race and growing up in a white majority area, and sort of realising how important that was, but also that I need to kind of like, I guess, digest that a little bit. And then I started reading a lot and listening to stuff. There wasn't a lot out there, but as much as I could really. And then I think the book that massively changed things for me was the Why I No Longer Talk to White People About Race. And I read that, and I remember saying to Nay, oh my goodness, you need to read this, like, now. And I think at first you were like, no, I don't think I can. Like, I think it's too much. And I was like,
it's going to open
it's like trauma. And I was like, yeah,
what's in that box?
Exactly. But I was like, please, Nate, like, it will, but I think this is really important. And then you read it, and then that's when we started having the conversations. And then that's when we kind of like did this thing of like swapping notes of, did you ever get this? Did anyone ever tell you this? Did you? And I was like, yeah. And I think that's when we realised that our story similar but very different as well. And then that's when we started having the idea of actually there's no space or safe space to have these conversations. And actually, what could that look like? Because I think at the time I could see these conversations around kind of the sort of everyday sexism stuff and, you know, the platforms, but what does it mean for everyday racism? And so we sort of had this conversation. We were like, maybe we should start something, you know, where kind of Black and brown people, specifically in the UK, can actually like come together and talk
share
about
their stories.
Yeah, share stories.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think there's something so powerful in stories and telling your truth, and not being able to have the space to do that is really gutting, you know. So we started having that conversation, but we had no idea what that would look like no idea at all. We sort of thought maybe it could be a website, maybe it'd be a WhatsApp group, I don't know. And then I think a couple of years after that, that's when the whole kind of everyday racism platform unfolded, and that's when we set it up, and then obviously it is what it is today. So
yeah, and I think it's so lovely to have a space, but like that also what this massive, huge community that you've created like has become.
Yeah.
Throughout all of that from the very beginning, the fact that the two of you were like sharing your own stories and kind of validating each other's experiences by bouncing them back and forth. I think that really speaks to what it feels like now. The fact that it's coming from like two different people with similar but different experiences, it really lends itself to be a very welcoming and like inquisitive community that you're leading. So how would you describe the platform Everyday Racism? Kind of what the last couple of years, what would it look like if someone like opened up on their phone now, and what's your intention behind it?
Yeah, so it has developed and changed. So it initially started simply as an Instagram account where we invited Black and brown people and people of colour to send in their stories of things that they had experienced, specifically in the UK to begin with, because we felt that there was a narrative that the UK didn't really have a problem with racism. And we're a very multicultural society. We're very accepting, tolerant. I find that word wild.
Yeah, it's an ick word, and I don't really know why.
Like Britain for so long prided itself on its tolerance. And I'm like, do people know what tolerant means?
Yeah, that's a neutral to negative term.
Yeah, it's like, we put up with you, you know. So I'm not sure that's the word we were going for. So people could sort of use that as a real positive, and we were like, well, that is not the day-to-day experience. Like, that is not how most people, I can't talk for everyone, of course, but most people that we meet, that is not how they feel. They experience this and this. But again, it's that thing of like, I just get my head down and I just get on with it. So that's how it started, and we obviously got a lot of stories. So people would email us or DM us, and we just started sharing if they were happy to, a picture of them and then an outline of what they wanted to say, basically. We were led by them. So, and then we would share simple explanations of terminology to do with racism. So things like, you know, what is white privilege and what is gaslighting and things like that. So it started off and it you know, it kind of built, and people were sharing things and people were encouraging us, saying, oh, it's really, you know, although it's not nice to read, I'm really glad that you're sharing what people go through. Yeah. And then obviously the murder of George Floyd happened, and things, as you know, things blew up on social media in terms of sharing kind of content and people doing a lot of kind of performative stuff as well, like black squares and things. And where we had made some infographics, they started to go viral, and the page just really kind of picked up quite quickly.
It was a really fast, like it was like that bit, you know, when you're going on a roller coaster and you're going like up, and then it was like that. Straight, like, it was
it was
a
a
lot.
strange time.
It was.
And we, but people were saying like, oh, I didn't understand that before. I didn't really know what that meant. Thanks for explaining it. And we were like, I think this is quite helpful for people. So we continued to make infographics and also other things. So other things as well. Like we would share artwork by Black and brown people and people of colour, and we would share people's events and just a real range of things where we were like, well, actually this platform is run by us. We get to decide what goes forward on this. And so actually if somebody wants us to share something, then we're going to share it, because like we're not confined by anything. So that's been really powerful, actually, that we haven't got anybody else telling us what we need to do. And it's just grown. And so now we have 193,000 followers, but also we've branched out from that. So we do anti-racism training for companies and organisations. We have a book club, and the new year of the book club launches next week. We've got a Patreon, which is we're part of a platform where you can subscribe to learning, and we have people that pay a monthly subscription to come onto our learning series. So it really has developed. And then we've written a book.
Let's talk about this bloody book, because I am so. Before we started recording, I was saying how excited I am, and particularly my mum is to read this book. Because it feels the first time that I met both of you, it was you were right in the middle of like intense writing mode, but it just feels like such an important topic, and I'm so excited about it. I feel like I could just waffle about it for ages. So what's this book about? I am so excited. Tell us about the book.
Okay, so it's called The Mixed Race Experience. So it's quite self-explanatory. But it's basically about growing up mixed race, and just also to make it really clear, like, because I think sometimes with the title, what we're not saying is like, this is the experience and that's it. It's actually a combination of kind of our life and our stories. And then we've interviewed 30 other people who either identify as being mixed race or are in interracial relationships or raising mixed race children. Because, I think there's, again, this narrative that when you're mixed race, you're white and you're black, and it's, two and only two sides. And actually it's not that. It's, it's multiple. And I think as well with the title, the mixed race experience, and actually calling it mixed race, I know a lot of people don't like that terminology as well. And we completely understand that. But also the other terms, again, are very limiting to kind of biracial. So again, you're looking at like two, or dual heritage, you're looking at two. So that we felt that mixed race was the one that could kind of encompass everything. Yeah. We decided to write it last year. We got approached to write a book, and at first we thought it would be kind of the everyday racism story. And then we kind of realised actually that wasn't the right avenue to go down. We sort of, I think a lot of people are talking about the kind of allyship side of things. And we were like, actually, do we really need to take up room like in this space? I think there's a lot of amazing people out there writing that, and I don't think that's really for us. So we chatted to our friend, and he's a black guy who's raising mixed race children. And he said to us, like, guys, the book that I need is The Mixed Race Experience. I need to know how to raise my children. There's no books out there that actually explores that. And we were like, oh, yeah, actually, that's so true.
Well, actually, I was like...
nay, the whole... So funny.
This is where we're different.
This is where we're very different. So I'm like, oh, my goodness, yes, this is it. This is the book. So I remember us driving home from London, and we got home and I was like, no, like, let's do it. This is the book, The Mixed Race Experience. And you're like, no. I said, why? Why? And you were like, I just don't think we're the right people to write the book. And I was like, no, this is our lived experience.
This is
like
massive imposter syndrome.
Like, why would we not be the people to write this book? Like, that's ridiculous. And you were like, no, I just think there's other people that could do it. And I was like, who? Like, of course there are other people that can write it, but I'm like, we have the opportunity to do it, so let's just do it. And you were like, no. And I said, listen, I'm going to write the email to the agent and I'm just going to say, I've got this idea. Like, what do you think? And they emailed back within 5 minutes and was like, yeah, that's the book. And I said, no, we've got to do it. We've got to do it now.
How do you feel about it now, no?
Yeah, completely.
Come round.
Come round. Yeah, I think I was a bit anxious, really, because it is very personal. And so I felt there would be a level of vulnerability about writing the book that I didn't know if I was prepared for that. But yeah, I'm really glad now. And there was, like I said, there's stuff that I found out about myself along the way. Yeah. Parts were really painful. Some parts were really liberating.
Yeah.
It was so great to speak to all the different people because it really felt like it validated so many of the things that we had felt. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm really excited for it to come out into the world.
And I think we've always said, like, this is the book that we wish we had when we were younger. There wasn't anything like that when we were young. So I always kind of think about younger me and seeing that on the shelf and being like, oh my goodness,
That's
and reading about your experience or just relating to something when you think that no one else gets it, I think is so powerful. So it's just really exciting that we can write something like that.
That feels very humbling, actually.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I think to have a collect, like it's both of you and it's storytelling, but it's also branching out to other perspectives of these experiences is going to touch people and inform people in so many ways. And I'm very excited for both of you.
Thank you.
Roll on April. It's going to be big. It's really exciting. And just, and also to be able, it takes a lot of bravery to do something which is very emotive and where you're not just in educator mode, even though you're both brilliant at that, actually going another level and speaking from your own experiences. Like that's hard. That's big stuff. And I feel very proud of both of you. I'm very excited.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really big stuff. So within the near future, we've got the Mixed Race Experience coming out. What I want to kind of end this conversation looking to the future a little bit. So what are your hopes and dreams for everyday racism and this like space that you are creating, and for yourselves, like within that and beyond it?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think for me, like everyday racism now is huge. It's massive, and all the streams that we're doing, and book clubs and Patreon and training, and just the Instagram page itself. It's quite mammoth, and it can become quite sort of like I will never want it to go kind of the corporate route, but I think it's a big organisation. But I think for me, I really want to just remember why we are doing what we're doing. And actually, when it comes down to it, it comes down to the individual stories and the individual people that are affected by racism, systemic racism, white supremacy every single day. And we hold a lot of privilege because we are light-skinned Black women. And I think I really want to make sure that I can use that privilege for like real change. And for me, that looks like, educating people, motivating people, like helping people to understand that this is everybody's issue and it is not going to change unless we are together on it. And also, I think for me, I'm really passionate about young people. Like I have worked with young people for a long time, and I'd love to be able to, go back into that and start working with young people around this and having these conversations in earlier stages of life. So it's not later on, because the younger generation are the next generation, you know, and they are able to, like, we can do this work and we can change it where we are now, but the younger people are the ones that are going to take this on. And they're doing incredible stuff. Like, it is amazing what I see out there. And I love TikTok. I'm obsessed with TikTok. And I just think, like, the young people in there, it just blows my mind, like the conversations that they're having. So for me, I would love to take everyday racism into schools. I'd love to take it into youth groups. I'd love to do something around that. What that looks like, I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, I think there's so much more we can do. But I just want to remember, like, the individual people, because I think you can get really caught up in numbers and, we could do this stream and we can do that. But actually, it comes down
what
to...
are you doing it for?
Yeah.
And basically, that's like community and change. But
100%.
It's so easy to get caught up in valuing success, comparing it to other people. 100%. And instead, like, there is this core passion for both of you with what you're doing here. And it's about the community. And that's very special and very important to remember.
Yeah.
What about you, Nate?
Yeah, similar to the things that Natalie has said, really. I have been a teacher for 18 years, a secondary school teacher, and I'm still doing that now because I love it, and I love working in the school I'm in and with the students that I'm with. And so for me, a big part of this is the educational side, particularly with people that work with young people, and also obviously working with the young people themselves. So we've got a couple of ideas about how we want to kind of impact the education system, where we can see there are gaps and some issues. So yeah, we've got some plans over the next year to work on a project really to do with that. And then possibly another book.
Yeah.
Very exciting
stuff.
Yes,
a lot.
The fact that you are thinking about another book, having just written one, and with that one not even coming out, I am like really admire you, because a book takes it out of you a huge amount. So the fact that you're like, let's do another one, come on, bring it on. You two are incredible. And looking even further into the future, I guess I wanted to end all of these conversations thinking about how you would what you would like to be remembered for. Like, how would you like to be remembered in terms of the ways that you made a difference? And that can be big things like the massive stuff that you were talking about and planning out, and also really small moments.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, I think I want to be remembered for somebody that took action rather than just... Words are obviously very important. And, you know, we need language, and we need academia, and we need all of those things. But also somebody that did practical things alongside that, I think is really important, because I've met a lot of people that talk about things, but they're not putting anything actually into action. And for me, I think the measure of a person is by the things that they do over what they say. I mean, obviously both are important, but actually I'm more interested in, do your actions align with what you're saying? So I hope that that's what I'll be remembered for. And also someone that had fun.
That's
and,
so important.
Like, laughed and was fun, because I mean, I love to laugh, and I love to dance, and I love, you know, and all of these things. And I love clothes and dressing up. And I think sometimes when, you know, you do like work to, you know, that's to do with, you know, social injustice, and these things are so important. But it's almost like you have to negate those parts of yourself.
You're only allowed to be like a serious version.
Like we only want to see one side of somebody. And so something I try and lean into is actually I am allowed to be all of those things. All parts of my identity are valid. And so, yeah, there's that as well.
And it's so nice to see all of them alongside each other and like all mixed together. That's a joy, because you are not just one thing. None of us are.
None of us are. Yeah.
I think you're definitely going to be remembered for all of that and more. What about you, Natalie?
It's funny. I always think so. I've already planned my song for my funeral.
Oh, no.
And no, it's nice. It's going to be Beyonce, I Was Here.
Oh my God.
And I love that song because it's all about kind of like leaving your mark, leaving your footprints, you know, that life was more than you ever thought it was going to be. And I think now, like I do honestly think that, like, I think there was a time in my life where I really was like, I don't know who I am. I'm so inadequate. Like I'm just not, like, what am I doing in this life? And I think now I've really found my voice through the work that we do. And it's really hard. Like it's really hard and difficult. And it's a really like difficult topic, obviously, but it's something that I really want to like help people with. And so I guess for me, like I also just want to be able to be remembered for someone that just did things without kind of, even though inside I'm, you know, wrestling with myself of like, I'm not capable of doing this. You're not qualified. Like, I just want to be able to leave my mark knowing that I am qualified. Like, I don't have to be a certain person to do what I'm doing. Like, anyone can do it. You know, I wasn't academic. I wasn't, you know, I didn't love school. I didn't get all my grades, but actually that's not important now. And so I'm just really love what I'm doing now, because I really do feel like it is making a difference. Whether it's just a little drop in the ocean, it doesn't matter. So yeah, I guess, I don't know. I don't really know if any of that makes sense. But
It all made sense. And what you're both doing collectively and separately is much more than a drop in the ocean, because it's not only you're having these, you're kind of starting and holding these like big complicated conversations, but you are doing them with like such care and like passion and joy when there can be. And that's really important, because we are all here. We all need to do things that feel really important and feel like we can like hold each other up. Yeah, it's such nice. This is the weirdest thing, because you said that and I was like, I can imagine your funeral. It'll be beautiful. Yeah, and I was like, I don't want to, because then you won't be here anymore.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make it about my funeral.
No, but that's important. We were talking in the break. Like, it's, you know, it's so important to say these things and think about these things outside of like weddings and funerals. We've got to like, and say them about ourselves as well. Steph was saying that. So yeah, thank you both so much for sharing all of this.
Ruby.
You're both incredible, and what you do in Thanet and beyond is extraordinary. And I'm so excited to see all the things that you do next.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. Thanks to Olbies for having us, and to Arts Council Cultural Recovery Fund for making this possible. Thank you to Darren on tech and Lisa, who's doing the BSL interpretation for this. We look forward to seeing Leading Ladies grow each year as a platform for us to celebrate the incredible women of Thanet. For more information on POW, the festival and the charity, check out powthanet.com and POW Thanet on socials.